I can never say it. Magonia. Passport to Magonia. On UFOs, folklore, and parallel worlds. Jacques Vallée. And I did it again. Okay. Chapter 2. The Good People. Why don't we just blow it up a little more? I think that's what I'll do. Man's imagination, like every known power, works by fixed laws, the existence and operation of which it is possible to trace. It works upon the same material, the external universe, the mental and moral constitution of man, and his social relations. Hence, diverse as may seem at first sight, the results among the cultured Europeans and the debased Hottentots, the philosophical Hindus, and the Red Indians of the far west. They present on a close examination features absolutely identical. Edwin S. Hartland, The Science of Fairy Tales, an inquiry into fairy mythology. It was an unusual day for the Food and Drug Laboratory of the U.S. Department of Health, Education and Welfare, when the Air Force requested an analysis of a piece of wheat cake that had been cooked aboard a flying saucer. The human being who had obtained the cake was Joe Simonton. I remember this one. I think Keel talked about this one as well, didn't he? A 60-year-old chicken farmer who lived alone in a small house in the vicinity of Eagle River, Wisconsin. He was given 3 cakes, ate one of them, and thought it tasted like cardboard. The Air Force put it more scientifically. The cake was composed of hydrogenated fat, starch, buckwheat hulls, soybean hulls, and wheat bran. Bacteria and radiation readings were normal for this material. Chemical, infrared, and other destructive type tests were run on the material. The Food and Drug Laboratory of the U.S. Department of Health, Education and Welfare concluded that the material was an ordinary pancake of terrestrial origin. Where did it come from? The reader will have to decide for himself what he chooses to believe after reading this second chapter. It begins with the Eagle River incident because this is a first-hand account given by a man of absolute sincerity, speaking for the U.S. Air Force, Dr. Alan Hank, I'm not sure if I pronounced his name right, who investigated the case along with Major Robert Friend and an officer from Sawyer Air Force Base stated there is no question that Mr. Simonton felt that his contact had been a real experience. The time was approximately 11 a.m. on April 18th, 1961, when Joe Simonton was attracted outside by a peculiar noise similar to knobby tires on a wet pavement. Stepping into his yard, he faced a silvery saucer-shaped object, brighter than chrome, which appeared to be hovering close to the ground without actual touching it. The object was about 12 feet high and 30 feet in diameter. A hatch opened about 5 feet from the ground, and Simonton saw 3 men inside the machine. One of them was dressed in a black two-piece suit. The occupants were about 5 feet in height. Smooth shaven, they appeared to resemble Italians. They had dark hair and skin and wore outfits with turtleneck tops and knit helmets. One of the men held up a jug apparently made of the same material as the saucer. He motions to Joe Simonton, seemed to have indicated that he needed water. Simonton took the jug and went inside the house and filled it. As he returned, he saw that one of the men, I don't know what that word is, something envisaged, the saucer was, maybe it's inside, is meant to be, inside the saucer was frying food on a flameless grill of some sort. The interior of the ship was black, the color of wrought iron. Simonton, who could see several instrument panels, heard a slow whining sound, similar to the hum of a generator. When he made a motion indicating he was interested in the food that was being prepared, one of the men, who was also dressed in black, but with a narrow red trim along the trouser, handed him 3 cookies, about 3 inches in diameter and perforated with small holes. The whole affair had lasted 5 minutes. Finally, the man closest to the witness attached a kind of belt to a hook. Is that what I'm saying? I'm sorry for the reading here. To a hook in his clothing and closed the hatch in such a way that Simonton could scarcely detect its outline. Then the object rose about 20 feet from the ground before taking off straight south, causing a blast of air that bowed some nearby pine trees. Along the edge of the saucer, the witness recalls, were exhaust pipes 6 or 7 inches in diameter. The hatch was about 6 feet high and 30 inches wide. And although the object had always been described as a saucer, its shape was that of 2 inverted bowls. When 2 deputies sent by Sheriff Schroeder, who had known Simonton for 14 years, arrived on the scene, they could not find any corroborative evidence. The sheriff affirmed that the witness obviously believed the truth of what he was saying and talked very sensibly about the incident. Food from Fairyland. The Eagle River case had never been solved. The Air Force believes that Joe Simonton, who lived alone, had a sudden dream while he was awake and inserted his dream into the continuum of events around him which he was conscious. I understand several psychologists in Dayton, Ohio are quite satisfied with this explanation, and so are most serious amateur ufologists. At last, ufology, like psychology, has become such a narrow field of specialization that the experts have no time left for general culture. They are so busy rationalizing the dreams of other people that they themselves do not dream anymore, nor do they read fairy tales. If they did, they would perhaps take a much closer look at Joe Simonton and his pancakes. They would know about the gentry and the food from fairyland. In 1909, an American Wentz, who wrote a thesis on Celtic traditions in Brittany, devoted much time to the gathering of folk tales about supernatural beings, their habits, their contacts with men, their food. In his book, he gives a story of Pat. Don't know. It's Phonancy. It's not. I don't want to say his name wrong there, but Phonancy, an Irishman of whom we know only that he was well off before the hard times, meaning perhaps the famine of 1846. And then it says sort of 47, I think it's 1847. One day, a little woman came to his house and asked for some oatmeal. Patty had so little that he was ashamed to offer it, so he offered her some potatoes instead, but she wanted oatmeal, and then he gave her all that he had. She told him to place it back in the bin till she returned for it. This he did. The next morning the bin was overflowing with oatmeal. The woman was of the gentry. It is unfortunate that Patty did not save this valuable evidence for the benefit of the U.S. Department of Health, Education and Welfare, Food and Drug Lab. Perhaps they would have explained this miracle of the multiplication of the oatmeal along with other peculiar properties of fairy food. For it is well known in Ireland that if you are taken away by the fairies, you must never taste food in their palace. Otherwise, you never come back. You become one of them. It is interesting that the analysis performed by the Air Force did not mention the presence of salt in the pancakes given to Simonton. Indeed, Wentz was told by an Irishman who was quite familiar with the gentry that they never taste anything salt, but eat fresh meat and drink pure water. Pure water is what the saucermen took from Simonton. The question of the food is one of the points most frequently treated in the traditional literature of the Celtic legends, along with the documented stories of babies kidnapped by the elves and of terrestrial animals they hunt and take away. Before we study this abundant material, however, we should supply some background information about these mysterious folks the Irish call the gentry, and the Scots the good people. Then it says Scogfer Maith. The gentry are a fine, large race who live out on the sea and in the mountains. They are all very good neighbors. The bad ones are not the gentry at all, are the fallen angels, and they live in the woods and the sea. Says one of Wentz's informers, Patrick Water, gives this description of a ferryman. A crowd of boys out in the field one day saw a ferryman with a red cap Except for his height, he was like any other man. He was about 3.5 feet tall. The boys surrounded him, but he made such a sputtering talk they let him go. He disappeared as he walked away in the direction of the old fort. There were few places one could still see fairies. In Great Britain or France after 1850, all the storytellers, all the popular almanacs agree that as civilization advanced, the little folk became increasingly shy. A few untouched places recommended by Wentz, however, are the Yosemite Valley in California and the Bend, Bolton County, and Rose Point in the county of Sligo, Ireland. Dublin seers are known to have made many trips to Ben Bulben, a famous mountain honeycombed with curious grottos at the very foot of the mountain. As the heavy white fog banks hung over Ben Bulben and its neighbors, Wentz was told the following incident occurred. When I was a young man, I often used to go out in the mountains over there to fish for trout and to hunt. It was in January, on a cold, dry day, while carrying my gun, that I and a friend with me, as we were walking around Ben Bulben, saw one of the gentry for the first time. This one was dressed in blue with a red dress adorned with what seemed to be frills. When he came up to us, he said to me in a sweet and silvery voice, "The seldom you come this mountain, the better. Mister, a young lady here wants to take you away." Then he told us not to fire our guns because the gentry disliked being disturbed by the noise. He seemed to be like a soldier of the gentry on guard. As we were leaving the mountain, he told us not to look back, and we didn't. Wentz then asked for a description of the gentry and was told the following. The folk are the grandest I have ever seen. They are far superior to us, and that is why they call themselves the gentry. They are not working class, but a military aristocratic class, tall and noble appearing. They are a distinct race between our race and that of spirits, as they have told me. Their qualifications are tremendous. We could cut off half the human race, but would not, they said, for we are expecting salvation. I knew a man 3 or 4 years ago whom they struck down with paralysis. Their sight is so penetrating that I think they could see through the earth. They have a silvery voice, quick and sweet. The gentry live inside the mountains and beautiful castles, where there are a good many branches of them in other countries, and especially in Ireland. Some live in the Wicklow Mountains near Dublin. Like armies, they have their stations and move from one another. My guide and informer said to me once, "I command a regiment, Mr. blah blah blah, Mr. Blank. They travel greatly, and they can appear in Paris Marseilles, Nepal, Genoa, Turin, or Dublin. How do you say that? Marseilles? I guess I pronounce it. Marseilles. I guess I could figure it out. In case I have to read it again. Marcellus? Oh, don't make me do this. Marseille? Is that how you pronounce it?
Marseille, but you can say Marseille. Marseille. The typical French pronunciation, Marseille.
So what's the point of all the letters is Marseille? What do you need the L and the R for? It doesn't make much sense. I swear they designed these languages to fuck with our heads. I swear to God, it's what they do. That's the reason. I mean, that's Marseille. Okay, that's Marseille. So I had no idea. So it's Paris, Marseille, Nepal, Naples, Genoa, Turin, or Dublin. Like ordinary people, even in crowds, they love especially Spain, southern France, and the south of Europe. The gentry take a great interest in the affairs of men, and they always stand for justice and right. Sometimes they fight among themselves. They take young and intelligent people who are interesting. They take the whole body and soul, transmuting the body to a body like their own. I asked them once if they ever died, and they said no. We're always kept young, Mr. Blank. Once they take you, you taste food in their palace, you cannot come back. They never taste anything salt, but eat fresh meat and drink pure water. They marry and have children, and one of them could marry a good and pure mortal. They are able to appear in different forms. One once appeared to me and seemed only 4 feet high, and stoutly built. He said, "I am bigger than I appear to you now. You can make the old young. So we can make the old young, the big small, and the small big." Now that we have refreshed the reader's memory regarding the gentry, perhaps we shall be forgiven for driving the parallel between fairy faith and ufology a good deal further. The Eagle River incident again will be the occasion of our reflections. The cakes given to Joe Simonton were composed of, among other things, buckwheat hulls, and buckwheat is closely associated with legends of Brittany, one of the most conservative Celtic areas. Okay, Brittany. In that area of France, belief in fairies, fees, F-E-E-S, is still widespread, although Wentz and Paul Sibyllet had great difficulty about 1900 finding Burtons who said that they themselves had seen fays. Is that what that means? Is that what? I always thought phase was spelled differently. Well, let's find out. It's never really been my forte in this. I'm just learning this myself, so I am no expert in this. going to say fees. I know it is. How to pronounce fee? Is it fey though? I was going to say phase, but maybe fees. Anyways, one of the peculiarities of Burton's traditional legends is the association of the fees or the Corrigans with the tax of being. I don't know if that. Some of this is somehow it turns out right. The TA something. That's all blurred out. Something of beings named Ions. In our chapter of the Secret Commonwealth, we shall study the fawns. So there's the fawns. So these fays and fawns more closely here. I want only to call the reader's attention to one particular pretty legend about fawns and magic buckwheat cakes. It seems fawns. It seems that once upon a time a black cow belonging to a little cave-dwelling fawns returned the buckwheat field of a poor woman who bitterly explained about the damage. Just make sure I'm saying it right. Like I said, this is not. I just know. I never took any of this seriously. To be honest with you, I would never. If I didn't have my own encounters and film the things that I filmed, I wouldn't take any of this seriously. I'd be like, pfft. Okay, it doesn't even recognize it. I'm saying, fawns. More closely here, I want to only to call the reader's attention to one particular pretty legend about the fawns and the magic buckwheats. It seems that once upon a time, a black cow belonging to a little cave-dwelling fawn ruined the buckwheat field of a poor woman who bitterly complained about the damage. The fawns made a deal with her. They would see to it that she should never run out of buckwheat cakes, provided she kept her mouth shut. Indeed, she and her family discovered that their supply of cakes was inexhaustible. At last, one day, the woman gave some of the cake to a man who should not have been entrusted with the secret of its magical origin, and the family had to go back to the ordinary way of making buckwheat cakes. I hardly need remind the reader that the Bible, too, gives a few examples of magical food supplies, similarly inexhaustible. Moreover, stories narrated by actual people provide close parallels to this theme. Witnesses of the following account given by Hartland. A man who lived at, here we go again, Yestrad Finlaus. So Yestrad Finlaus in Buckinghamshire, and I know that place, going out one day to look after his cattle and sheep on the mountains, and disappeared about 3 weeks after search had been made in vain for him, and his wife had given up him for dead. He came home. His wife asked him where he had been for the last 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Question mark. Is it 3 weeks? You call 3 hours? Said he pressed to say where he had been. He told her he had been playing his flute, which he usually took with him on the mountain at the Lorfa, I don't know, a spot near the Van Pool, when he was surrounded at a distance by little beings like men who closed nearer and nearer to him until they became a very small circle. They sang and danced, and so affected him that he quite lost himself. They offered him some small cakes to eat, of which he partook. He had never enjoyed himself so well in his life. Maybe those small cakes had shrooms in it or something, I don't know. Wentz, too, has a few stories about the food from fairyland. Something gathered them during his trip through the Celtic countries in the first few weeks of the present century. John McNeill of Barra, an old man who spoke no English, told Michael Buckingham, who translated the story from Gaelic for Wentz, a pretty tale about a girl who was taken by the fairies. The fairies, he said, took the girl into their dwelling and set her to work baking oat cakes. But no matter how much meal she took from the closet, there was always the same amount left on the shelf. She had to keep baking and baking until the old ferryman took pity on her and said, "I am sure you are weary of the time and thinking long of getting from our present premise, and I will direct you to the means by which you can get your leave. Whatever remainder of meal falls from the cake after being baked, put into the meal closet, and that will stimulate my wife to give you leave." Okay. Naturally, she did as directed and got away. John McNeill, who was between 70 and 80 years old, gave no date to the story, but since he said he saw the girl after his experience, the event probably took place in the second part of the 19th century. Scientifically inclined people scoff at such stories with a very indignant air. A group of UFO students, when contacted about the Eagle River incident, stated they did not intend to analyze the cookies, planned no further action, and had much more important things to investigate. 2 weeks after the sighting, Joe Simonton told a United Press International reporter that if it happened again, I didn't think I'll tell anybody about it. And indeed, if flying saucers are devices used by a super scientific civilization from space, we would expect them to be packed inside with electronic gadgetry, super radars, and a big computerized spying apparatus. But visitors in human shape who breathe out air and zip around in flying kitchenettes, that is too much, Mr. Simonton. Visitors from the stars would not be human or humanoid. They would not dare come here without receiving a polite invitation from our powerful radio telescopes. For centuries, we have exchanged highly scientific information through exquisite circuitry and elaborate codes. And even if they did come here, surely they would land in Washington, D.C., where the President of the United States and the scientific ufologists would greet them. Presents would be exchanged. We would offer books on exobiology, and they would give us photographs of our solar system taken through space telescopes, but perforated, cardboard tasting, pancake-shaped buckwheat cakes. How terribly rural, Mr. Simonton. Yet there is no question that Joe Simonton believes that he saw the flying saucer, the nameless grill, the three men. He gave them pure water. They gave him 3 pancakes. If we reflect on this very simple event, as the students of folklore have reflected on the stories quoted above, we cannot overlook one possibility, that the event at Eagle River did happen, and that it has a meaning of a simple yet grandiose ceremony. This latter theory was very well expressed by Hartland when he said about the exchange of food with fairies. Almost all over Earth, the right of hospitality has been held to confer obligations on its recipients and to unite him by special ties to the giver. And even where the notion of hospitality does not enter, to join in a common meal has often been held to symbolize, if not constitute, union of a very sacred kind. That such meaning is still attached to the common meal is readily seen at weddings and other traditional meetings where food is an important constituent, I guess we would say, even if the symbolic value of such events is lost to most of our contemporaries. Hartland goes as far as to suggest that the custom of burying the dead with some food might bear some relationship to the widespread belief that one must have supply of terrestrial food when one reaches fairyland, or forsake the earth entirely. And indeed, in ancient and recent traditions alike, the abode of our supernatural visitors is not always distinct from the world of the dead. This is a moot point. However, because the same applies to visitors from heaven, the theologians who argue about the nature of angels know it very well, but at least the idea of food provides another connection. In the light of Hartland's remarks about the right of hospitality, a passage from the Bible is noteworthy. Let a little water, I pray thee, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts, after ye shall pass on. For therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, so do as thou hast said. And he took bread, butter, and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. According to Genesis 19, Lot took 2 angels he met at the gate of Sodom to his house. He made them a feast, and did break unleavened bread, and they did eat. So after all, Joe Simonton's account might be a modern illustration of that biblical recommendation. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertain angels unaware. Rings in the moonlight. This section is devoted to several types of artifacts claimed by popular tradition to be a supernatural origin. Fairy rings. Saucers, nests obviously fall in the category, although such phenomena are treated as borderline cases of specialists in UFO investigation. I believe the nest deserves more than passing attention and should be considered in the light of specific traditional beliefs about the meaning of the magic circles that for centuries farmers had found in their fields. The literature on this subject is of course abundant, and we shall select only a few cases to illustrate the point and set the stage for a more detailed discussion in later chapters. On Thursday, July 28, 1966, in the evening, Mr. Lacoste and his wife were walking in the vicinity of Mont Saru, Maine, et Loire, France. So I don't know if I said any of that right, because the damn French words are never... Anyways. All of a sudden, they saw a red sphere cross the sky like a meteor. It did not. That just sounds referring to what I had my experience in February this year. It did not behave quite as a meteor, however, because it seemed to touch the ground and then rise again without losing its brilliant red color. Now that part's not, I didn't see that. And hover at mid-height for a while before it was lost to sight. A check was made for military experiments in the area, and there were none. The next day, a Montsoreau farmer, Elaine Roulette, reported that the 9-quarter-yard area of his wife's wheat field had been flattened and covered with yellowish oil substance. Further investigation disclosed additional details on the identity of the witnesses and the subtle substantiated the idea that a peculiar object had indeed landed. Lacoste is a photographer in Samoa. Unfortunately, he did not carry a camera with him at the time, and that always fucking happens. He describes the light given off by a sphere as being so intense that it lit up the whole countryside. The sphere hovered, he said, for a few seconds. Then it maneuvered close to the ground. The witnesses felt sure it was a guided military gadget and walked to a distance for about 400 yards from the object, which went away and was lost to sight behind some woods. The whole sighting had lasted 4 minutes. That's a long time for that kind of encounter. Most of these things are a matter of seconds, and there's not much you can do about it. This is what it is. Although I must say, Mike, as far as UFOs go, all three of my sightings, they lasted. I mean, the first one lasted forever. The second one, it lasted at least a couple minutes when it made the 45-degree turn going west. And then the one that I saw in February, that lasted for a good couple minutes. It lasted long enough for me to waddle, get my camera, then come, which takes me ever to do, and then come back and get my walker, then drag my ass and my walker out and downstairs my back, and then get through the back porch to still see some of it. That's after seeing it and watching it from my kitchen window, and taking me at least a good 30 seconds to try to figure out what the hell I was looking at. So yeah, easily that could have, what I had I encountered was pretty close to that. It's exceptional though. Most of the time, these sightings and these things happen in seconds, maybe a couple minutes, 4 minutes. That's a long time. That's how I see it, but I don't. I mean, I don't know. I'm no expert. But no one can be an expert in this stuff because everything's different for everybody in every situation. And they make it that way. They never make it consistent. One sighting, people are seeing people floating in the air. The next sighting is this boat floating in the air. And the next one is some kind of a pill box or whatever the hell it is, or TikTok or flying saucer. I mean, it's wild. Charles Fort was fucking right about a lot of things, turns out. He was a brilliant investigator, an author and writer, and had a brilliant mind. And the amount of contradictions that that happen in our realm, and it's but most of us don't pay much attention to what's going on. We're too busy staring at the computer, living in our box. How many of you, and anybody who listens to this, the 2 or 3 of you who listen to this, how many of you in the past week spent 10 minutes, or necessarily that 1 minute, deliberately looking up in the sky at night? The odds are none of you have done it. That's not a commendation on you, just the way our life is, right? Our ancestors 3 generations ago, they had nothing else better to do but look at the stars. Of course, actually most of our ancestors lived in smog-filled, polluted air, so we missed out a lot of stuff. But I'll tell you what, if you ever get a chance to go somewhere like Death Valley, man, and you see the brilliance of the stars and the Milky Way, you're like, what the hell? That's what you'll say. Amazing. What is this place that we live on? They say we live on a ball. But I'd not argue that we don't. But I also will say the same token, I have fucking no idea what this place looks like. I don't. I live in my own cell in this prison plant just like the rest of you. We miss out so much in the reality around us. And I think we don't. I think it's part of the imprisonment of us, first of all. And the other thing is, we've lost our connection with the creation and the creators, or creators. Yeah, we live longer, but do we live lives, real lives? Or do we live something very superficial that appears to be a life? It's almost like we're farm animals and we all live in our cages. And surely there's, we're responsible for doing much of it to ourselves and to each other. But there's other things out there, I believe, that are benefiting greatly from it. Okay, where's it with the flattened? Lacosta is a photographer as Samor. Unfortunately, he did not carry his camera with him at night. He described the lights given off by a sphere as being so intense that it lit the whole countryside. They thought it was a military gadget. Okay. The whole sighting lasted 4 minutes. 6 months earlier, a rash of similar sightings had made headlines in Australia. More flying saucer nests was the big news on the front page of the Sydney Sun Herald for January 23, 1966. Man, that year shows up all the time. There was a lot of freaking weird shit that happened in this world in 1966 and 1967. A rash of similar sightings, okay. 3 nests had been discovered in Queensland, circular clearings of dead reeds surrounded by green reeds. Hundreds of sightseers were searching for more by the time the reports were published. On January 19, 1966, at 9 a.m., a 27-year-old, we search for this stuff and we're interested in this stuff because of the mundaneness of our existence. We're not living like we're supposed to. Everything's wrong. And we know this. And I hate to say this, he's someone who used to be such a Jesus freak, and those who follow me know I have been. But lately I've given up on all of that. And please forgive me, but I have. And maybe you have too. But the thing is, when you look at the correlation between the Abrahamic faith and how humanity has been stripped from our symbiotic sacred nature with the creation of the Creator, it cannot be of God. Now, I know there was a lot of wars, or at least rumors of wars back then, and they say that there's less wars today than there ever been in the history of man. But there's different type of wars now. We wage different type of wars. They're wars for the mind. They use their eugenics and their pseudoscience and medicine as a way to calm the herd and keeping us dumbed down and keeping us... so much of it doesn't make any sense. Unless they're serving some other entities or beings, and our purpose is to be loose generators. Our emotions, our feelings, our suffering, our pain, our isolation, all these things, is for some reason they get much more results out of that than the warfare and violence and that nature. Yet it still happens throughout the world. There's plenty of atrocities and the unaliving, as they say. In TikTok, you're not allowed to say murder or killing. You have to say unaliving, or they'll censor you. And I'm sure it's happening as well now and other platforms. I'm sure YouTube is the same way. If they wanted to, I'm so damn censored. I used to have thousands of subs. I can't. That's why I don't even bother trying to make like the videos and content I used to make, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. It's not, after January 6, 2021, it's pointless. It's put all that time and energy into it. I see other guys doing it, and good for them, and they got the good setup, and then anyways, my voice sucks, and I'm uglier than sin. I look like a freak. A lot of things have happened in my life that I'm just a freaking freak. I look like a freak. And I have a life that's bizarre, and I don't know where to go with any of this anymore. Maybe Monday. You guys won't even hear this. So by the time you even hear this, there's a possibility that I have started doing interviews again, and there's a possibility by the time you hear this, I have interviewed 3 guys, which one I definitely believe I can count on. And now there's a couple other guys or people that I like, and a gal I wouldn't mind interviewing, but they're flaky. I don't know. I'm not going to mention their names but I've been hanging out once again with these New Agers. Now, New Agers are pleasant and but here's the thing. I was in the New Age movement back in probably from 2006 to 2009. And maybe I had a lot of issues there. And I'm sure people had a hard time accepting me because I look like a freak. I talk like a freak. I got like screwed up eyebrows and all sorts of shit. You know what I mean? I'm a mess. With the Rh negative disease and then, but once the MS hit, after getting poked with the swine flu stinger, and ended up with MS, and I was in this. It was Unity Church. Anyways, it's this New Age church, and probably government sponsored and created and by the oligarchs and elite to mind screw us. In fact, I know they did. But the thing is this positive attitude shit, right? There's no honesty in any of that. I mean, in the sense that, yeah, it's good it's much more pleasant to be with people who are super honest, right? I mean, positive. But the problem is the lack of honesty that you find in all group settings and cults. And so when when I got hit with the MS, they threw me on the bus like a ton of bricks. Is that it right that we're saying? They threw me on the bus like a pile of shit is what they did. And you know why that was? Because they didn't want to be reminded of their own humanity. Because people believe that as long as you think positive and just do positive affirmations all day, that somehow magical things are going to happen, and you're not going to suffer, and you're not going to go through pain, you're not going to get sick, and you're not going to die. It's part of the delusion. And honestly, I know they know deep down inside, everyone knows they're going to pass away, and it's just, but no one wants to deal with it in our society. Other cultures, our own ancestors, whether European or Native, a part of the First Nations and other groups, death was something that was embraced, that was talked about on a continual basis. The whole idea is you live your time here, and then you go to the happy hunting grounds, or you go to that sacred place where your ancestors came from. We don't want to talk about that stuff anymore. Now it's about pretending to be gods. Do you really want to be a god? People seem to, I know with growing up Mormon, that was part of the package. Get your own little planet. You and your wife, and she'll be popping out babies for all eternity, while you're screwing her all for all eternity. Insane. Madness. But here's the thing. From what I've learned in life, that we should embrace the hardship, the pain, and death, and make it a part of a ritual, like our ancestors, a sacred ritual, a celebration, of passing on to somewhere better. Whether it is true or not, we should do that. We shouldn't hide from it. We live in such a wacky, dysfunctional, what's the word? Schizophrenic society. If you think that you don't have mental issues and psychological issues, and you live in this world today, in the Western civilization, or in all cultures for that matter, in this world, you're in total denial. All of us have all the issues. Every one of us has a mental issue, a psychological, if you will, a spiritual issue, a physical issue, materialistic issues. Even those who are have all the money in the world. Let's look at people like the richest man in the world, Bill Gates, right? Or the other richest guys in the world, allegedly. They're all propped up to be the richest guys. They're all fuck-ups. They're all messes. And they're all whack jobs. They all have issues. All of us have issues. We don't want to talk about that, but we need to talk about it more, don't we? Because this part of this been fragmenting of the soul, the mind, and the body, the separation from the Creator. To me, whether reincarnation is true or not, which I would not be surprised how cool this place is, that they do have reincarnation, that we get stuck here, we get sucked, if we get tricked, and we go to the other side and come back. The argument of not going to the light probably is a rationale of a logical thing when you think about it. That when you go to the other side, you're going to be waiting for something that you believe is Jesus, when nobody knows what the true image of Jesus is. And the image that most people are familiar with is, Michelangelo's lover and a grandson of a pope? And that we're going to be waiting for on the other side? Nobody knows what the hell Allah looks like. Or how about Yahweh? Is anybody going to know what that looks like? They'll love bomb the living hell out of you, like they do in churches. You go to the other side and then get love bombed. It's clear to me it's going to happen. And if you're strong enough to resist that, then you're going to have to deal with the things that I'm feeling and experiencing, which is the other side of these creatures, these beings that are disturbing and scary looking and frightening. They might look like Bigfoot and aliens and all that. Oh my gosh, and that drives so many people back into the light that way. I think the real purpose, if you get to as long as I have on this earth, is to develop not a retirement fund, not a pension, not a condo in Florida, but enough courage and insight and stability and stamina to face what's on the other side. All the rest of this stuff doesn't matter. We hear about it all the time that it doesn't matter. And the truth is, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about the material shit. I'm talking about the things. All you have to do is live around here. I have this place long enough. Listen, you could be a famous movie star or an actor. You can have fame and fortune. It's fleeting, and it's a trap in its own right. Just as being the poorest, a guy like me, who's got nothing but physical problems and is impoverished because of it and has been isolated because of it, we're all in the same boat. And most of us instinctively know there's something wrong here and we don't want to come back. Our ancestors from the East all believed in reincarnation. Many cultures in the West believed in reincarnation. Reincarnation is actually in the New Testament. John the Baptist was Elijah, as Jesus said it was, if you believe the story. Point being is, if we do reincarnate, we're not learning anything here. So why are we here? And I've lost track of, so I'll just go back here and I didn't read that much of it anyways. Did I? About a page and got all total lost. Let's see. Ring of Moons? Yeah, we just start. Because I don't see any evidence of the need for salvation. If you do believe anyways, the Bible says, if you believe what they said, hey, you're all saved anyways. We're all saved anyways, regardless of how perfect you are here. It didn't just say only for those that believe the salvation for mankind, for all, especially those that believe. It didn't say solely for those that believe. That's a very difficult concept for many Christians to accept universalism. But if you really believe in Jesus, and the true Jesus, and by the way, in the New Testament there are two Jesuses. There's Barabbas, and then there's Jesus the Christ. Jesus Barabbas, and Jesus the Christ. Which one was the good guy and which one was the bad guy? And which one are we worshiping now in our day and age? Because if you are a true believer in Jesus, you're supposed to do greater miracles than he did. That's what he promised. And none of us are doing that. The only thing that any of us have been doing all these years is being used car salesmen for what seems to be an imposter. All the suffering. And things are not getting better, folks. They're getting worse. In every respect, except that wars have changed and the appearance of war. Now, yeah, we have a car now and we have highways and we have boxes with heat. But the thing is, we're not in harmony with the creation or the Creator. We're all living in bubbles and cubicles. We're all living like prisoners here. Yeah, we live longer. Thank goodness for glasses, huh? Could you imagine living longer without the glasses? What kind of place is this that you live this long and you lose your eyesight? Many of us end up losing our eyesight in our teens. What's causing that? We can talk about the food, we can talk about the medicine, we can talk about a lot of things. But at the end of the day, it seems to me that we're in a wasteland and there's some backwaters fucking place that the Creator forgotten all about. It's like we got captured, kidnapped, and thrown in here. Deceived, thinking that we're going to get something or experience something. The promises that were made were lies in their own right. Or if not that, then I agreed that I would suffer from physical health and pain and isolation and loneliness and disappointment on a day-to-day basis for fucking 55 years? For what? What's the learning in it? That sounds really negative, doesn't it? And it is. But it's the truth, too. And the truth is brutal. It's ugly. And when you get honest about it, that's the moment of actually changing things. Denial is not going to help anything. Once you get honest about your circumstances, you might start changing things a little bit. Big things you're going to start doing is stop valuing the things that the matrix of the systems tells you that are important. You start becoming more authentic your own self. You start valuing a tree, a plant, maybe a rabbit running across your yard, your children, things, life. So many of us live like prisoners in giant boxes. We spend our days staring at the television. Just like this, it's still 2023. There's still people that waste their whole precious time watching television. There ain't a fucking thing on a television to watch worth watching. Not a thing. At one time, at least it was the weather. You don't need television for the weather. There's so many platforms out there on the internet, online, for your local weather. You never need to watch television ever again. In fact, you know what? You can spend literally 5 seconds a day and know what the weather is going to be just by staring at your phone. For 5 seconds. Things have changed. This is an opportunity, even though it's part of the Matrix to enslave us. That's what they want to do. That we still, I mean, this is like the YouTube videos. You can learn a skill from it. You actually learn how to build a car from the refinery on up. A house. A cabin. How to paint a brilliant abstract painting or something less like Rembrandt. You don't need to even go to college anymore for half this stuff, because there's plenty of places, but you have to do the searching and the research to find it. But there's things to be learned. I never in a million years would thought I'd be writing a book. I know how deficient I am in my spelling and my grammar. But thanks to Grammarly and apps like that and software packages, it helps me while they go along. I'm slow and they give you suggestions and synonyms and better words to use and sentence structure, and it's like, well, son of a gun, I can write a book. I couldn't have done that 20 years ago. I know I could. I knew I couldn't when I was a kid. And most of us could. I have such utmost respect for a guy like this we're reading now here from, what's his face? Jacques Vallée. He wrote a book, 50 years ago. Wrote a book. You imagine the amount of paper he had to use to write a book. How many times you had to make a mistake with the typewriter and have to, scratch it out, or, with the pen and put the right word in and then retype the fucking thing. The same page probably a half a dozen times just to get it right. If you're a real good art writer, maybe 3 times. Now this is the chance. Yeah, so we're losing our skill, the handwrite. That's a bit of a problem. But the trade-offs are so positive at this point. The thing is, the rulers of this matrix, we cannot take serious anymore. We cannot let them ever believe that we value them ever again in their systems. We can figure this out together on our own, collectively. Yeah, there's always going to be scoundrels and scumbags, and most of you are. That's the brutal truth. I don't care if you call yourself a Christian, a Muslim, whatever. You do a chance you're a scumbag. You know what I mean? It's the truth. But part of it is because of not being educated properly. Valuing the right things instead of the wrong things, which is what most people do now. Materialism. Stupid. I mean, it's cool to have a fancy car. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. But it's not important. Nor should someone pay outrageous amount of money for basically 4 wheels and an engine. That's just a different shell on it. I mean, things could change if we would be willing to change for the better. But it's such a hard thing to do because you start out on the wrong foot to get-go. What kind of place is this? Why is it being allowed? And then the goal is, as we read this stuff about these aliens and all, you hear this constantly, well, we're here to help you, and you guys are making a mess of the place. And I'm like, well, you haven't been helping us, and it seems like they want us to make a mess of this place. I sincerely believe that. Because they could, at any time, could have stopped this stuff. It's not. It's not happening. Anyways. So next reading, I think this will be part 3. It'll be The Rising of the Moonlight. And I find this book fascinating. It's going to probably take a long time to read it. Fawns and fays. Is that what it is? Fays. Bonds. I didn't know that fees or fays were spelled like fees. And I didn't know that the funds, fawns and fays. I didn't know they were spelled that way. I've heard people talk about it, but I have never really got into folklore and aliens and UFOs and all that kind of stuff. And my focus has been this 6 years, logically, because of my encounters in particular. And what I'm filming is, Bigfoot and forest spirits. And the forest spirits that I'm filming don't look anything like fawns or gentries or fays. They look far from that. So I don't. Anyways.
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.
Don't know, you should take it slow. Are you searching? Is it hard to find? If you're broken, running out of time, what you don't have is any peace of seasons don't change who we are. The good is gone, but there's nowhere to go. If I can't go, will you take me there? I won't break, I feel. Seasons don't change who we are. The good is gone, but there's nowhere to go. Seasons